Welcome to Breaking Bread Podcast with your host, Chelsea Passon.
And Dana Black.
I cannot believe we're finally recording. Like today, we're finally sitting down and recording.
It's been long enough.
It's been...
I think we posted our coming soon picture like 6 months ago.
Yeah, but I mean, the main reason is because we thought we were going to start way before now. Just because of all the difficulties we've had with trying to make sure this is good and having everything we need to have, because we just want it to be as well as it can be.
It was worth taking the time to get everything set up. You know. I'm so curious though. Can you tell me the backstory about the podcast? Because you have some history with podcasting before.
You mean interest in podcasting?
You kind of have a little bit of a history.
I mean, kind of. I do have like the photography background of doing photos and whatnot. It's nothing like recording. It's completely different. But I do have some equipment that we're currently using, of course. And that, I guess, background with the camera. But the whole podcast thing is I started really getting into watching Instagram reels, and it was a lot of like snippets of people's podcasts.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is really impactful. I'm getting moved by a lot of these videos, just like 10-15 second videos of people saying amazing things. And I was like, wait, I can do this. Like I could do this as a podcast to tell about my testimony with my son, with Kellen. So I bought all the equipment, all like the basic things that you can buy, and then just sat in my closet. And
you were in your closet?
Yeah, I didn't know where else to record.
Is the light on?
Yeah, I have one little ceiling light. It's a really small closet, but I didn't know where else to do it, so I just like sat in there with my laptop and then the one microphone that I had and just spewed out my...
Were you videoing?
No.
Yourself? It was just audio.
It was just me talking for a whole hour and like whatever. I think it was an hour.
Wow.
But that was the thing, is that it was just me talking into the microphone for an hour, not having anyone in there, not like having any comments or anything.
Yeah.
And after recording, I was like, wow, I really hate this. This is not like how I want my testimony to be out there of my son, just like me sitting there talking straight.
Was the name Breaking Bread at that time too?
I had gotten the name Breaking Bread around the time. Yeah, and that's what I wanted to name it. I had chosen what I wanted the cover photo to be and everything. But the name Breaking Bread was because around that time I really got into making homemade bread, and I liked the biblical resemblance of Jesus broke bread with people.
Yeah,
like he broke bread with his disciples, and that's kind of what you do with when you have friends and whatnot. Like you break bread with them and conversate and just talk about life and whatnot. And I don't know where that name came from. It just came to me.
It just came from like you're just sitting there one day and you're like, Breaking Bread.
I know, because I didn't want it to be just something basic or something like not meaningful. So Breaking Bread, of course, biblical reasons, but also like I was really into like the homesteading life, which I mean I still am, but like the homestead, like bake your bread and like make all these things from scratch. So it kind of just fit. And so after recording and not liking it, I posted about needing someone to come join me, and
Where'd you post that? That must have been before we were friends.
This was way before we were
friends.
Because
I've never seen that.
This was all within like a year ago-ish, give or take. I just wanted someone to come on with me to just talk with me, give me some like questions and whatnot, and have like input besides me just talking to a microphone.
Oh, yeah.
I had a close friend who I was going to bring in and just like record with, but it just didn't feel right at the time. I don't know why. I'd never just said, yeah, let's sit down and talk and record. I just never did it. So I let that go, kind of let that in God's hands. And then ever since then I've prayed. It's literally written on my prayer wall, Lord, you give me a platform to tell about Kellen's testimony. I'll tell the world.
Wow.
And I know that if I don't tell my testimony, it's only real between me and God. And I mean, yeah, that's enough, but I want people to know like what I have overcome, what Kellen has gone through, to just like get that message out there. And
it's so powerful. You know?
I just didn't want it to be something just like, oh, I'm sitting there getting it done, posted, that's it. I wanted it to be like really impactful, having people conversate with me and hear about what I went through.
That is so crazy. And while all that was happening, I guess for you in the background, like I was sitting there pondering because okay, so I guess I'll share my history with it because I don't have any experience with podcast or equipment, but about 5 years ago, I was at a prophetic conference and this guy spoke a word over me about podcasts, and I would eventually start creating podcasts. And I remember sitting there like, a podcast? Like, what is a podcast? Like, it's just, that was not popular
It's
at
not.
all.
It's only gotten popular within the last 2 years.
Yes. Okay.
Like,
so
really popular.
it's why I literally just tucked that word away, and I'm like,
okay.
whatever. So maybe about a year ago now, it's probably been about a year ago, I woke up one day and I was reminded about that word, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot. But look at how popular podcasts are these days.
Yeah.
So I remember just sitting there like, all right, God, like, if you want this, if you want to do this, if this is really what you have for me, like, let it just be so smooth, provide everything that I need. And like throughout this time, I ended up finding out that Nathan produced podcasts, and I made some connections. And I remember I told Nathan one day, I'm like, listen, I have no experience with anything. I don't know what cameras are. I don't know a camera setting or this. Cords. Like, this is not up my alley. But I know you do, and like I would love to learn a little bit about how I can produce it. I'm like, the Lord gave me a name for it and everything. He was like, oh, cool. What's the name? I said, Breaking Bread. And he was like, oh, that's a really cool name. So then a few weeks later, I think you guys had lunch. Is that right?
Yeah, I had them over. It was Nathan, Alyssa, Taylor, and David. So his family over at my house.
How did y'all get on the podcast conversation?
We were just talking conversation. I don't even remember. We were just talking conversation. All of a sudden the podcast stuff got brought up. And I was like, I think it may have been because they were trying to talk to Gerardo to start recording at the Reminding.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So we started talking about the podcast, and I was like, yeah, I picked the name out and everything. And I told Taylor asked me, what's the name? And I told her. And then Nathan looked at me and he was like, what? I was like, Breaking Bread. And then he said, wait a second. Then he texted you.
I got the text. It was just like, yo, what's the name of the podcast you wanted to start again? And I was like, Breaking Bread. And then I didn't hear anything from him for like a minute. Because he
showed me, and then we all started talking. Everyone's like, there's no way. Because I had told them, I was telling them, why I stopped, why I didn't pursue it, why I didn't keep going, because this was my issue. And then he showed me the text that you sent him that you said the same name. I was like, there's no way. And that's when I texted you, I think, a day after. And I was like, hey, I really, I don't know about this, blah, blah, blah. I really just want to start this podcast. All I know is that we have the same name. And then I think you got the impression of, oh, I don't want to steal it, you take it. But I was like, no, Dana, the whole reason I am reaching out to you is because I need someone with me to do this with, because I can't do it by myself. I'm not very leaderly, take control of the reins and do all these things. I'm kind of go with the flow. I'll be, if you're prompting me with something, I'll be able to handle it. But me doing it by myself, sitting in that closet was terrible.
I think it's so crazy that we had the same name and the connection.
How did you get that name though?
I was literally just sitting at dinner with two of my friends, and I told them that I wanted to start a podcast, and that I did nothing to prep for it. This was literally just the idea was still there, and I was sharing with them. I'm like, I think I'm going to start a podcast soon. And we started throwing out names to each other, and somehow Breaking Bread got thrown out. And I was like, that's it.
Wow.
Look no further. That's the name. We don't have to talk about it anymore. It just was a light bulb went off and was Breaking Bread, because same reason that you said, it has that biblical meaning, but it also is such a common phrase these days. Let's go break some bread together. It's conversation, and it was perfect. So,
well, that alone just is what I said to everyone that I'm talking about this podcast with, is the fact that we just started going to church around the same time. We met, and you were the person that everyone kept telling me, Nathan and Alyssa were there's a girl that goes to our church who has a G2 baby. And I was like, huh? Who's this Dana? And then we finally started becoming friends after me going to the women's night.
That is crazy. We were the same age.
We are.
And we both were caring for a child on a G-tube. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but then on top of that, you were praying for someone to have all these things. Not only did we have all these things, but God led Gerardo into recording.
Isn't that wild?
Into starting to do podcasts. And that's why I was like, this is this is insane. God opened the door not only for us to meet, have the same name, start this thing that we both thought about like years ago.
Yeah.
And now it's like led into like we have hands on everything that we can be like, hey, I need this, and someone runs and gets it, or hey, I have this issue, someone runs and help us to fix this issue with this podcast.
Absolutely.
Like
I remember praying, like, God, if this is what you want from me, like, you need to bring someone along that can do all the tech stuff.
Right.
And someone that has the time to edit and all these things. Like, I was like, I can't do this by myself.
I know. Well, I was already like amazed and like just in awe of God about bringing us together. And just like I said, the name is what really caught me to be like, this is it.
Yeah. Who just like meets somebody who's looking to start a podcast and the Lord gives them the exact same name at the exact same time. It was just.
And it's like, we both kind of like let it go. Like, okay, God, if this is what you want to do, whatever. But then like it finally all falls in together in his timing. Thank you, Lord. But then like after just us having the name and meeting and talking about like us having the name, the fact that he opened the door for Jar to start recording podcasts without him.
Your husband is literally
he's our cameraman. I know,
for a living.
Now he records podcasts for a living, and it's just like God. When you just like, I think it goes based off of if you don't put your identity in things, God can really do a lot of things. Because once you start, we're just talking about that today. Once you start putting your like identity and your worth into things, God can flip the script in 2 seconds. So what happens if you lose that job? What happens if you lose like that ability to do those certain things?
Yeah.
Like it's all God, and I'm so excited that we got to sit down and do this.
Do you remember when you texted me and I responded to you, and I was a little just hesitant, not only because like you too, we both wanted to make sure that this was like a God's thing, timing, and it wasn't. And then I really didn't know what your mindset was, and I didn't want you to think I was like taking your name or anything. So I was you can start it, it's okay. And you're sitting there thinking like, wait, let's do it together.
I know, I texted you too. I know you were like kind of hesitant.
I was too, but I just didn't want to put that pressure on you either.
I didn't know
like
that.
We just really.
I know. I thought you were just like, oh, you can take the name. I was like, wait, Dana, I need you.
No, deep down, I was like, I would love to start, but I just didn't want to be like too pushy. And I didn't know, because I didn't know your vision of the podcast. But I remember us would we take like a week or something?
Think we took a couple of days of fasting, and then we were like, okay, let's meet up then. We talked about it, felt comfortable, and starting to do it. And then we literally sat there for our hour meeting for 3 hours.
We were supposed to meet for an hour. Like I had to go to work. And we were there for 3 hours talking just about life and everything.
I think your like person texted you about like work or something, like, wait, I need like 30, 40 more minutes.
Oh my gosh. I remember after the conversation, we just looked at each other and we're like,
not gonna have an issue talking.
This is gonna be kind of easy. Okay, we don't have any problems.
I know.
Yeah, that really is awesome. There's definitely God's hand over this. I truly believe. Mm-hmm. Thank you guys for listening to The Story Behind the Mic. This is just a little preview of what we have coming for you in our very first season, Moments of Miracles.
Stay tuned.